welcome to another edition of the Mark and Mitch Show with Mark Strigl and Mitch Lafon. Mitch, how are you?
Good. Doing well. It's a busy summer, and I gotta love that.
I'm coming up there to Montreal to hang out with you and be at the great Heavy Montreal.
Yep.
It's back. It was off last year, right?
It was. Well, there was Metallica and Guns N' Roses
Right.
at the same time, sort of end of July, August, and it just didn't make sense to have sort of the two biggest names in metal have their own shows and then put on a third event. So no, it took a break to give room for those guys, but they're back this year with Rob Zombie and Avenged Sevenfold. It's going to be great. And don't forget Montreal 77 with Suicidal Tendencies the night before.
Yeah, I'm actually coming up for that too. I'm looking forward to that. Suicidal just played down here in the New York area, and I heard it was a great show, so I'm looking forward to seeing them up there at Heavy Montreal. Or that's at 77 Montreal, the night
Montreal
before, right?
77, actually, yeah. So
Right,
July
okay.
27th, Montreal 77. You've also got Rise Against that's going to be there, and then July 28th, July 29th, Heavy Montreal. So it's gonna be fantastic. And my buddies from Helix and Lee Aaron are
Yeah.
going to be there, so that's going to be great too. And oh, let me not forget, my buddy Rick from Sword is going to be there, so that's going to be great. It's going to just a lot of fun, you
Yeah,
know.
and Marilyn Manson, of course, will be there, which I'm looking forward to seeing him. The last show I saw with him in New York ended abruptly when a piece of a
I think
stage
that
prop
well,
fell on him.
it was a
Yeah,
cross, wasn't it? It wasn't like his huge giant.
yeah. It was this big thing. No one really knew what happened. It was a weird. He was on the floor. The band kept playing. They eventually stopped. It was very strange. And that was actually the last show with Geordie White too. So it's kind of a interesting show to be at. I'm looking forward to seeing a full set, hopefully this time by Marilyn Manson at Heavy Montreal. And we will both be doing interviews at the festivals, both Montreal 77 and Heavy Montreal. So stay tuned for all that coverage on the Talking Metal podcast and on Westwood One's Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Yep.
So it's gonna be a very, very exciting 3 days. Looking
Yeah,
forward
and
to it.
I'm telling you, this is what I'm looking forward to. Zombie and Manson have put out a version of Helter Skelter, and they've been playing it live on the American part of their tour that's together. I think that'll be cool to see. I mean,
Yeah,
such a great song. You know, we know it, of course, from the Beatles, but our age, we know it more from Motley Crue, and it'll
right.
just be
That's
fun,
true.
right? And
Yeah.
so it'll just be fun to see Rob and Marilyn do that as a, I don't know if you want to call it a duet, but, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting choice for a song too, because I literally just 2 nights ago saw this documentary on Charles Manson, and the Helter Skelter song was a big part of that. Uh, Whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it,
Now,
horrible situation. Yeah.
another thing with Heavy Montreal, they had Ratt booked, and
Yeah.
then Ratt pulled out because at some point there was no band. There was just Steven and Juan, and the new band is back with
Yeah.
3 new members. What's your take on all that? I mean,
I read your post, which seemed to really get people talking. So good,
well,
good job on
well,
that.
let
Yeah,
me let me
where you
expl-
compare it to Priest. Go ahead.
right. Let me explain the post
Summarize
because
your post. Yeah.
I took to my private personal Facebook and I said, listen, people are slamming Ratt. They're saying it's fake Ratt, and the band doesn't move around on stage. They're old and they should hang it up. And I said, well, wait a minute. Judas Priest has 2 members, a singer and a bass player, similar to Ratt. Rob and Ian are certainly moving slower, and Ian, as we know, has stood in one place on the stage for probably the last 30 years, and that's not to slag on him at all, but that's what he does. And I go, well, the media especially go, Judas Priest, oh, they're fantastic, they're awesome, it's epic. And it's like, well, why is that not fake Judas Priest? It's 2 guys.
Right.
And so I took to that, and by the way, I only use Judas Priest as an example just because it is a bass player and a singer. I mean, I could have said the same about whatever Whitesnake. I could have said Foreigner. And it's just funny that there are some bands, Sebastian Bach, Don Dokken or Dokken, Skid Row, uh, and the media just slag on them and bitch on them and moan and tear them down and say it's awful, 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 awful. And then you look at other bands, Whitesnake, Scorpions, Judas Priest, people revere them. And
Right.
their situations are very similar. I mean, David Coverdale has been a solo artist essentially under the Whitesnake brand since essentially 1977. And I know folks will argue that date. They'll say, oh, no, no, they were a band until 85, or they were a band. But still,
Right.
Scorpions have changed members as much as any of the other bands. Uh,
Hmm.
it's just funny that certain bands get a pass, and I'm talking from mostly from the media, and other bands, oh, they're terrible. Oh, it's fake
Right.
Kiss. Well, why is it fake Kiss? You know?
Yeah, it is an interesting point with Judas Priest because I do see what you're saying. I mean, to play the devil's advocate, I could say, well, Scott Travis, he has been there since Painkiller, which is kind of part of the classic era, and he's been there literally decades at this point. So
True.
I don't know. I think people still
Well,
kind of accept him. Sure, he's not from the early '80s or '70s, but uh, and the it's an interesting comparison. I am anxious to see Ratt. I did see the YouTube clip that you sent me of them doing Round and Round, and I gotta say I didn't. Warren DeMartini's playing is so iconic and so unique, much like a George Lynch or an Eddie Van Halen, that I had trouble watching the clip. I was fine with the vocals. People are like, oh, he can't sing. I was actually okay with the way Stephen was singing in that. I thought he sounded pretty good. As a guitar player and as such a fan of Warren, my biggest problem with that clip of Round and Round, and that's all I'm judging it by. I haven't seen anything else, just that one clip with the new guitar players, was the guitar. And in a band like Ratt, and no disrespect towards KK Downing or Glenn Tipton, but Warren's playing, to me, Warren is just on another level, and he's very hard. It's very hard to duplicate that sound, that technique. And I had trouble listening to the solo because it sounded kind of right, but not. It wasn't Warren. You could, for me personally,
you could tell. You could tell.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
guitarist has got to get rid of the plaid shirt around the waist. I mean, that's just
right,
not a Ratt look. But I mean, I just get somewhat annoyed with fans who get these holier than thou kind of positions where
right,
it has to be all the original members or nothing. And it's like, well, if we're going to do that, let's not forget that Rob Halford is not the original Judas Priest singer. So if you want to go all the way back and bring that other
well,
guy back, then let's play ball. But
yeah.
otherwise, sometimes,
As far as the albums go, though, I mean, that other guy
right,
was out of the band before
true.
Rock and Roll or whatever it
But
was.
it's
Yeah,
just funny how they'll say, well, in Rat, you got to have all the original guys, or it doesn't count. And it's like, well, then let's apply that to every band. Let's see how it
right,
works out with Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Anthrax. And let's go back to it. Let's see what Anthrax sounds like with Neil Turbin. It's like,
right.
maybe not.
Yeah,
And it's just, it's frustrating. I think, and a lot of band members from known bands wrote me privately after I posted that and said, as long as the songs sound good, the fans go home with a smile on their face, what's the problem? And I'm like, well, you're right. If you put on and I don't want to use the word competent because that sounds sort of cheesy, but if you put on a fun show, play the songs that the fans can sing along to, and they go home with a smile on your face, then what's wrong with it? And there's nothing
right,
wrong with it because otherwise, nobody else is going to be playing those songs. If it wasn't for Steven and Juan right now, no other band would be playing Round and Round, and that would be a shame
yeah.
that songs like that disappear from the live circuit by band members that were involved. So, I'm for it. I'll always be for it. I'll always support bands. There are some bands that have had better replacements than others. Sometimes the replacements are so outrageously bad that it's like, oof, okay. But 9 times out of 10, Quiet Riot, not Firehouse, Foreigner, and I've been
Yeah.
having a good time at their shows, and
Oh
I
man,
want to,
I tell you, that Foreigner show I went to a couple weeks ago,
right?
out of this world. So much fun and such a great response from the crowd. And
And you saw Styx recently too, right?
who's that?
You saw Styx.
I was unable to make the
Okay,
Joan Jett Styx thing. I mean, I saw Styx,
year or
maybe
two
like
ago.
a year and a half
Right, but you
ago,
saw them
2 years
with
ago.
Gowan, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
it's a
yeah. I've seen
great
him a couple
show.
times. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Excellent show. I
Yeah.
didn't. They literally played a couple nights ago here in New Jersey, and I couldn't make that. But
Well, but you
I've
know what I
definitely
mean.
seen them
Gowan is
numerous
great.
times. Yeah, in
Yeah.
the last few years. Yeah. Oh, awesome, awesome. Sticks do a great job. Um, and in Dokken's defense, and Dokken, like you mentioned earlier, get a lot of
Grief.
grief and shit in the media for going out there without Lynch. I don't know John Levin. I've met him a handful of times, but I don't. He's not. I don't know much about him. I've
Right.
never interviewed him. Actually, I did interview him once. But he does an excellent job at
Absolutely.
duplicating those George Lynch solos. And I've heard people say, "Oh, he's a Lynch clone. He doesn't have his own style." I don't want his own style. I
Right.
want
But
I
you
want
see,
him to play George Lynch's solos exactly like George Lynch does. And that was the one problem, going back to Ratt, that I had with that YouTube clip that you sent me. And I'm not counting Ratt out. I will go see them when they come through the area. I want to hear those solos and that guitar sound as close as possible to the Robin Crosby, Warren
but
DeMartini
you see,
sound.
your point about John Levin is exactly it. You said, "Oh, people are saying that he's a Lynch clone." So if he sounds like the band, he's a clone, and they rag on that. And if he doesn't sound like it,
Yeah,
oh, he's not. You can't win, and
yeah,
and it's frustrating. And listen, look back to your Foreigner show and the Stick shows and all those shows you've seen over the last couple of years with your wife.
right.
Would you trade those nights in for nothing? If you said, listen, I could take that memory of Foreigner and erase it from my head, or I can, right? You wouldn't want to erase it because you had a great
100%.
time.
Yeah, excellent time. Yeah,
And so, that's my point. So stop ragging on the bands. Vote with your wallet. If Rat comes to town and you don't want to see it, don't go.
yeah.
But what? But why take to Facebook and the internet and start saying that it's horrible and they should stop and blah 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 blah? Well, if you're going to apply that logic, then be consistent and apply it to every band, including Kiss, including Judas Priest, including Metallica. They have a replacement player. You know,
Right.
stop it. Go
Yeah.
enjoy the show, and if you don't want to go, stay home and let others who want to enjoy it.
And two quick thoughts on that note. I'm judging Rat by a YouTube clip that I watched on my phone that you sent me, which is totally unfair.
Right, which was
You
recorded on a
can't do that.
phone.
Yeah, which you really can't do that. And so again, my verdict is still out on Rat. I need to go see them play live. I'm bummed they canceled Heavy Montreal, but I'm sure I'll get a chance, hopefully sooner than later, to see them. And that's how I will judge them, whether I leave the show with a smile on my face or not. And that's how you have to judge shows, guys. Don't get too wrapped up in the YouTube clips because,
No.
as you said, they're recorded on a phone. People are watching them on a phone. And the second thing I wanted to mention is I will have right on the Talking Metal YouTube channel, youtube.com/Talking Metal. I will have a full review that I'm posting in just a day or two, if it hasn't been posted already, of the Foreigner, Whitesnake, Jason Bonham show, which again I just love. So stay
That was a
tuned for that
great show,
review. Yeah,
and Whitesnake was great. So, we'll wrap it up by saying, I guess, enjoy the shows. Don't be overly critical, and just let the bands be the bands, and vote with your wallet. And of course, Heavy Montreal, July 28th, 29th, Parc Jean Drapeau, Montreal 77, again Parc Jean Drapeau. It's going to be 3 crazy, crazy nights, and of course, the next night, or July 30th, 4 nights after, I've got Gen X in Watertown, New York with POD Lit Alien Ant Farm. So I am going to have my body beaten up and bruised, but
wow, that's intense. I know that same day, the 30th, that's a Monday, right? Yeah,
yep.
which is the day we get back from Montreal. Faster Pussycat is out on the road with Don Jameson, and they're playing literally down the street from our house. So
You got to go. You're going to have to go.
we're gonna have to muster
suck
up
it
some
up.
energy.
Yep.
Emily might go without me. I'm not sure if I can make that, but Faster Pussycat was great at M3, another great festival that
Right.
we were at.
And
Yeah.
look, there's a band that doesn't have I think only Tammy's an original member,
Yeah,
and you had fun.
true. Yes. Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah, so
definitely.
that's what it's about. It's about
Right.
whether you have fun. So stop with all this nonsense about it's not an original guy. Well, so what?
Absolutely.
There you
So
go.
I think, yep, that'll end today's episode of the Mark and Mitch Show. We will see you at Heavy Montreal, guys, and we will also see Mitch or hear Mitch on Westwood One's Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon, available at all your podcast outlets, right, Mitch?
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
on Google Play, Apple Podcast, Amazon Alexa, and then all of them, all a bunch of other ones, Podbean and all that. They all grab it too. So it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous.
And of course, the Talking Metal podcast is out there. We have a new company that's distributing our show, so I think it's everywhere too. It's Art 19, a great company. I'm just honored to be with them, and I think we're even on Spotify now. I'm not sure about that, but
Yeah. Well,
iTunes and Google Play and TuneIn and all that stuff. Yeah.
Spotify and has been trying to get these podcasts everywhere, and I think Westwood One and TuneIn just signed a deal with Westwood One. So hopefully Spotify and TuneIn will have my show as well in the near future. That's the hope, and that's what I've heard. So
Cool.
fingers
Very good.
crossed.
All right. I'll see you at Heavy Montreal, Mitch.
Yeah, and please find me on Twitter at Mitch Lafon, MITCHLAFON, and of course Mark.
Yeah, at talkingmetal.com on Twitter, or just look for Mark Strigl on Facebook.
Cheers.